Hi everyone. I hope it's okay that I'm holding the presentation in English. I assume it is. My name is Enea Gojka. I'm very happy to be here, very excited to hear about what everyone has to say at this conference. It's all very exciting stuff. And I'm also very excited to share my 2 cents on what I'm passionate about in distributed ledger technology. So you're not wondering what the hell I'm doing here and why I'm standing in front of you talking about this stuff. I'll give you a little bit of a background about me and then also about WTS. So I was born in Greece, and at the age of 5, me and my family moved back to our home country, Albania, and that's where I grew up and went to school. And I went to a bilingual high school, which is where I got the opportunity to learn German. And then I came to Germany to do my studies in information engineering and management in Karlsruhe. That's also around the time where I started developing a passion about, well, blockchain and cryptocurrencies. You know, Bitcoin was still an early hype back then, and I was very interested. And thankfully, at the university, there were also some lectures which had some information on that. So, yeah, I attended them, and I was lucky enough to write my bachelor thesis on the topic of security in distributed ledgers, which I then managed to publish in the Computing Conference 2021 with the help of my supervisor, of course. And along this way, I also did my transfer from Karlsruhe to Berlin. And the reason for that is mostly because Berlin is super cool, so why would I want to be in Karlsruhe when I can be in Berlin? And in Berlin, I stumbled upon WTS Advisory, and I can say with full conviction that I'm very happy to be at this company, and I'm learning a lot of stuff, and I'm able to do a lot of things which most companies wouldn't allow me to. So I'm going to say a few things about us. So WTS, we have 13 locations in Germany, 1,500 employees, and we make 200 million in revenue. In principle, we're a tax consultancy, but we have 3 pillars, which I consider very important to break down to, because otherwise people just think we're only a tax consultancy. We actually provide financial advisory as well, and we also provide a lot of digital solutions for our customers. So we basically are an integrated full service provider. And besides the offices in Germany, we're also working with tax consultancies in more than 100 countries, and all of this is coordinated from Germany. So at WTS Advisory, we have wide spectrum of offers that we have, from financial reporting to deal advisory, finance transformation, governance, risk and compliance, and digital architecture. And that's the team that I'm representing today. So what is digital architecture consulting? Well, thank you. Digital architecture consulting, well, it's the combination of what we consider the 4 big disciplines. So, of course, business and domain knowledge in this consulting field is very important, but also the technical knowledge, so in cloud and infrastructure, as well as data science and analytics. And last but not least, the beyond technology element. And we have people on our team that provide expertise in all 4 of these fields, sometimes in many of them at the same time. And this expertise is then used to provide solutions to customers along the entire data value chain, from the planning phase of a project all the way to the technical implementation. So if you're passionate about data, check us out. We're more than glad to talk to you. And yeah, so distributed ledger technology. Before I talk about the use case of taxation, I'd like to start with a bit of an intro on distributed ledger technology as well. I know you've all heard about it, but I just like to be thorough. So the definition that I like to use is that DLT enables the operation of highly available, append-only distributed databases, which are operated on distributed storage and computing devices, which we consider nodes, that may be arbitrarily unreachable or even act fraudulently. So let's break that down to make it make sense more. So highly available, that means distributed ledgers are designed to be accessible at all times and also nearly real time. Append only, that means that transactions or blocks or records or whatever you want to call them are appended after the latest block, and they are also immutable, so editing them is not possible. The distributed databases part, well, it's not centralized storage. It's the opposite of that. There are multiple nodes in the network that contain the information of a distributed ledger. And finally, and probably most importantly, what makes distributed ledger technology so interesting is the tamper resistance. Because information is not stored centrally, attacks against distributed ledgers are not as easy. Actually, they're a lot more difficult because there's no single point of failure. And furthermore, being append-only, it is difficult for an attacker to go to a certain transaction and try and change it, because then they would theoretically have to replicate all of the blocks that came after that. And since blocks are being produced at a very fast rate, that's very computationally heavy and very costly and probably not worthy. Right, so some use cases for DLT, which I'm sure most of you have heard about. Cryptocurrencies, of course. There are aspects in supply chain management and also in healthcare. But I'm here to talk about one more use case, which is interesting to us, and that's taxation in blockchain. And of course, taxes and death are the only two certain things in life. So, of course, they also ended up having to do something with DLT. The tax and regulatory universe is pretty complex. To me, it's even more complex because my background is in computer science and economics, and taxes are very far from my knowledge base, so to me this is just as complex as it is to you maybe, but there's a point I'm trying to make here, and that's that there has to be some way to make this complex thing a bit simpler. And maybe DLT is what answers that question. And for this presentation, I would like to focus on the taxation of investments in financial assets. So, from an investor's point of view, what's the current state and why does it need improvement? First of all, there are multiple stakeholders involved, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's a big market, it's okay. A lot of stakeholders is fine. But all of these stakeholders have their own processes, and these processes are not consolidated between each other, so the traceability, the paper trail is very hard. So for an investor, tax compliance suddenly becomes a big pain. And not only is it a pain, but it's also error-prone because of the involvement of so many stakeholders. And for the tax authorities, it's also not better. There are a lot of waiting times involved, also very high costs in case of investigations. So all in all, not a pretty picture. From the perspective of investment funds specifically, there's this graphic that I have here for you. It's meant to basically show how complex things are. Investors interact with mancos that interact with bank associations, transfer agents, registrars, and everything. And we add on top of that the tax compliance layer, the tax authorities that we always need to report to, and suddenly we know why it's a problem. It's estimated that there's 1.5 billion euros per year being lost due to errors and reconciliation. And that's already a big statement because it means that there is an improvement that can be made there. And due to the manual interaction from some relevant parties still in the process, everything still needs a lot of automation. And yeah, there's space for improvement. So now that we know that there's space for improvement, what are the benefits of actually doing it with DLT? Why are we going in this direction? So, first of all, it's data transparency. In a distributed ledger, every participant of the ledger is able to see what's going on all the time. The records are transparent, they're always there, time-stamped, and very verifiable. Because it is a distributed ledger, one can implement also automated review features through smart contracts, and these automated review features are very helpful for auditing. And due to having automated processes, due to having less of a human factor in the different steps, there are also reduced errors. And from this data that we have in the blockchain, a lot of the participants can also gain new insights. And lastly, and also most importantly, we have the interaction between stakeholders which previously did not interact so directly before. So banks, tax accountants, and the tax authorities can all be on the same page and not have to go through all of these hoops to interact with each other and incur costs for themselves. So, yeah, we talked about a potential distributed ledger with participants from investors to tax authorities to banks and all that. But what would it look like? In our view, this is a potential way it could look like and what we think would make sense. So imagine there are different blockchains where investors are getting together, and these could be permission blockchains, and besides the investors, you would have banks, registrars, custodians, and the tax authorities all on that blockchain. They would conduct their investment transactions there, and where we as WTS come through is in the tax domain. As tax domain experts, and also with the power to have people with technical knowledge in the field of blockchain, we can develop a smart contract that is able to, in real time, calculate the capital gains tax on every transaction, so that in the end, for investors, it's nothing but getting a report out automatically, and the costs and errors are therefore reduced significantly. So, yeah, so like more specifically for an investment fund, what would a smart contract entail? So there are a lot of aspects to take into consideration, but mainly we'd have to look at it on an asset level and on a fund level. So from an asset perspective, we want to know where the asset is located, what the currency is, what type of asset it is, and also from the investor or fund perspective, what type of fund it is, also the country of origin, and all of these factors play a role in the potential tax exemptions and all the different tax calculations that are being done. Through this smart contract, it's nothing but a matter of having the algorithm set up, and in the moment that a transaction happens, the data is there, the conditions are there through a smart contract, and the tax calculation just happens instantly. So, what are the benefits and drawbacks? Yeah, I talked about this potential solution, which we at WTS are also trying to prototype. But like, what are we dealing with here? What could be some cons that could get in our way, and what could be the real benefits? So of course, we noticed that tax compliance is a really big business opportunity, especially because of the real-time tax compliance aspect. Transparency is a big opportunity, both for the investors and also for the tax authorities. And also, the data that's on the blockchain is very insightful and could also potentially provide new insights for the participants. And because they are on the same blockchain, it also offers the opportunity for shared investments, resources, and risks. And all of this also develops into more client reach. So the negative aspects, of course, because many players are involved in the beginning, it's a bit harder to create a solution that's ideal for everyone. There's a lot of back and forth going on. a lot of negotiation. How is it going to look like in the end? And all that takes time and probably a longer implementation schedule than if you'd have to do it on your own. There's also the aspect of shared intellectual property. But not only that, but also the high infrastructure and learning and development costs at this moment, because there is, of course, a scarcity in expertise in this field because it's quite new. However, at least from my perspective, it's a worthwhile investment for the long term. So even if it is maybe costly right now, it could be something that's really worth it in the long run. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. I'd like to open the floor for questions, and if you don't have a question right now, you can ask me later. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, very interesting. My question is around the fiscal union of Europe, right? So we know that we have different fiscal policies in Europe. For example, the Luxembourg law is different from the German law when it comes to funds, right? Your example with the fund was really interesting to me.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you think that in the long term, blockchain can help to reduce the difference between different tax regime in different EU countries? And if so, I mean, why do that? Thanks. Sorry for the question.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it's a very interesting question, and I think I'm not sure if blockchain itself, like I don't think I can imagine it having the power to really unify tax regimes per se. But at least from my perspective, in my time that I've worked with the tax experts at our company, and from what they've been saying, it's at least on an EU level, not too difficult to adapt to different legislations of these countries and apply special rules within the smart contract to make this possible. And we also are thinking about potential clients outside of Germany anyways, because limiting yourself to one country does not make much sense in the case of investment funds. But it's an interesting question, and I don't know, maybe if there are blockchains in the future that involve investment funds from different countries, that at some point maybe that will eventually drive regulators to seek a solution that makes it less complex. But yeah.